All right, here we go. Just waiting for our guest today, John Stryker Meyer,
The legend.
the man, myth, the legend. This is a huge opportunity for us. And if you are a student of history, especially Special Forces history, you have definitely heard of Military Assistance Command Vietnam Studies and Observations Group. And you probably already heard about John Stryker Meyer.
A lot of people don't know about the secret war. Like, it's just not.
Yeah.
Like, everyone knows about the Vietnam War. Maybe people know that we were conducting operations outside of Vietnam, particularly to the west of Vietnam. But a lot of people don't know the details and what the mission actually was.
Exactly.
So this will be super interesting and educational to our listeners for sure.
Yeah. And look who's here right now. The man, the myth, the legend. John, how are you today?
Other than being technologically slow, we're doing fine, sir.
That's all of us. I wasn't an 18 Echo. I was an 18 Bravo and then a 180 Alpha. But Ryan knows.
Oh, is that right?
Yep.
Yeah. I'm a little bit more on the tech side, but still handicapped. So
we're not talking about mental handicap here.
Thank you so much for joining us. We were just talking about the importance of understanding where we come from as Green Berets, members of SOF community. As a kid, I grew up watching old TV shows, Tour of Duty. I grew up watching the old John Wayne Green Beret movie, and then diving into things like Roy P. Benavidez's story, understanding just how much of a monumental task was dropped on your shoulders, on your guys' shoulders, and what you guys did is nothing short than legendary. And
remember, the key things are young and dumb.
right. And I think some of the things a lot of guys have in common with you is that their first introduction into warfare was an absolutely insane mission that they weren't even sure that they were prepared for, but damn it, they're gonna give it the old college try.
Amen.
John, please, for those that don't know about MACV-SOG, please give us an introduction.
Oh, gladly. Yeah. During the early days of the Vietnam War, the big question was, what is the enemy doing in Laos and Cambodia, which are countries to the west of South Vietnam, and then of course North Vietnam up north. And in the early 60s, under the Kennedy regime administration, that initial duty was by the CIA, and they had a couple of issues that embarrassed Kennedy. So Kennedy goes, okay, we got to turn this thing over to the military. And at that point, President Kennedy was the one who authorized the wearing of the Green Beret. And he was familiar with our training. He was familiar with what the capabilities were of our men. So they turned it over to the military. And so in June of 1964, that was the beginning of the opening of the Secret War. It was MACV-SOG. So it's MACV, which is the Military Assistance Command Vietnam Studies and Observations Group. And that they put that tag onto it so that when snoopy reporters would go through the budget line, they would see studies and observations. Oh, that's bullshit. Give me the good stuff. And it worked. So that was the beginning of the 8-year Secret War. And it took a while to get it up and running. But by 64, they had teams. They were doing training, and missions were being conducted. Initially, they walked across into Laos or Cambodia, doing some recon. And then we had the South Vietnamese Air Force that became our transportation. And by the time I arrived, there were 6 FOBs, forward observation bases, but we called them FOBs. FOB 1 was at I Corps. That's where I went. FOB 2 was Khartoum, and FOB 3 was Khe Sanh, which in the early parts of Tet of 1968, the Marines have been getting bombarded for 77 days at Khe Sanh. There was a full siege by the North Vietnamese, and they were attempting to overrun it as they had with Dien Bien Phu in 1954 with the French. But they failed there, as in every other offensive that they launched during the Tet of 68. And then we had FOB 4 at Da Nang, FOB 5 at Ban Me Tuot, FOB 6 was Ho Nok Tao, the furthermost south FOB. It was just northwest of Saigon. So 5 and 6 launched missions into Cambodia. 1 through 4, our primary targets were Laos, which was codenamed Prairie Fire. And we had signed or had been a part of an agreement of some sort of treaty that said, we, America, will have no troops assigned to Laos or Cambodia. And the communists did the same thing. And of course, being communists, they lied like they always do. And by the time I got there in 68, there are 25 to 30,000 stationed in Laos, anywhere from 25 to 100,000 in Cambodia. They would come across the border, attack our aid camps, attack our allies, and then go back and lick their wounds in Laos and Cambodia. And the rules of engagement were very strict in Cambodia. And then in Laos, we had a little bit more flexibility in terms of TAC air, close air support. We had the A1 Sky Raiders, Air Force fast movers, and of course, gunships from both the Marine Corps, like Scarface, Eagle Claw, a couple others, as well as 101st to 76 from the Army. And so 68 was our biggest year. By the time I arrived, and of course, when we arrived at FOB 1, myself, Johnny McIntyre, and John Hutchins get off the South Vietnamese Air Force, the codenamed King Bees. And a recon team got on. It was Spike Team Idaho, where the 1-0 was Glenn Lane and the 1-1 was Robert Owen. They disappeared, and they're still listed as missing in action today. So that was my introduction to the Secret War. Spider Parks had been on the team, had been promoted to get his own team. So when Idaho got wiped out, Spider was brought back to the team. He was the team leader. Don Wolken, who was a sergeant, became the assistant team leader, and I was a radio operator. And then we hired more South Vietnamese, and then we had to train up my green ass, and took a few months, and then we started running missions. And that went on until 1972. And of course, today, just for a contemporary post, there are still 50 Green Berets that are missing in action in Laos from the Secret War. And we've documented at least 83 aviators who died, are still missing in action, who died supporting us in the Secret War in Laos and Cambodia. And there's 1,584 Americans still missing in action today in Southeast Asia from the Vietnam War.
That is, to fathom that interaction right there, just to see that transition. You get off, you see the guys get in, it's like you head nod, never see him again. And
that's kind of like, hey, when you guys get back, let's have a beer or something, or maybe a Coke.
Yeah,
they don't come back.
Yeah, and we intimately know that feeling from our time in Afghanistan. We've had those, hey, I'll take your assault pack, I'll go back, I'll refit it, I'll fill it up with dip, and then I'll bring it back out to you. And then later on, just a day or two, you have that sit down, hey, so-and-so is gone. They didn't make it. There's what happened. But one thing that we none of us have experienced is we got our guys, we got our brothers out. And they may not have all come home the way we wanted them, but now there's a lot of our heroes, a lot of brothers are still there, still gone somewhere. And that's the part that's like, holy shit. Like, that's, no matter who you are, that hits you, that brings you back to the understanding of that war. That didn't come to terms like we saw Afghanistan shut down. Like, there was a hasty pullout, yes, but we got our guys out of there. And in this case, we still have missing Green Berets, and that sticks with every Green Beret from that period on to the guy that graduates the course tomorrow. That's a reality of the profession. That's the reality of our history. You're going to be called on to do the most impossible, the most dangerous missions out there. And there is a understanding that you might not come home, but holy shit. Like, I can't tell you how honored we feel to have you on the show. Every time we meet a Green Beret from Vietnam, it's an important, impactful meeting, because you guys paved the way for us. You paved the way for us to make it, to continue serving, to continue growing the regiment, continue building the force, so we can continue bringing the fight to the enemy. And your stories, your books, and that of your brothers is just phenomenal. It's just, we got a little bit of that in our time in Afghanistan, in Iraq. We can look back and say, holy shit, like, we're doing it. We have our own little team in our support force, and we're continuing to carry that torch, take the fight to the enemy. And it's humbling to know that, man, like, you guys are up here, and we got to experience a little bit of that brotherhood. And I'm just so grateful to have you guys around to share this knowledge and share the history with us, because without you, we don't get the true story. We don't get the true understanding and the gravity of, there's still guys missing.
Right. And then the other thing is, special forces is, I mean, to my utter embarrassment, they are remarkably piss poor at retaining our history. They're so busy working at the tip of the spear with all the different missions. And of course, a little 20-year war can slow you down. But at least now, like, the Special Forces group is really working to get back to emphasis on our history. And there's a Special Forces museum that's on Bragg, and they have a small staff, but at least they're there trying their own small way. And of course, we got our podcast now. We do a SOG cast, where I'm interviewing guys from the Secret War, and I'm trying to get started on my 4th book, but it's been a little slow between moving to Tennessee, having grandchildren, and a wife who's very proactive. Man, oh man.
You have five kids of your own, right, John?
Say again?
You have 5 kids of your own?
Right. We had 5. We lost one 2 years ago in a car accident.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Our oldest boy was killed in a car accident. And but yes, we have 5. We have 3 grandchildren that are the absolute delight. You know, they're probably the brightest grandchildren ever born.
So speaking of MIAs over in Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, there are programs that, if you're listening and you're active duty or not, you can sign up for programs and organizations that go out and look for Americans that haven't returned home yet. John, I don't know if you know any of those organizations off the top of your head, but I do know that I've had several service member teammates of mine that have gone out and signed up for that. I don't think they knew what they were getting into. Maybe they thought it was going to be something different, but no, you are in the jungle and you are excavating and looking for remains of our fallen comrades.
Yeah, we my knowledge is very limited because just been busy throughout the years, but there's the Defense Department has the Defense of POW MIA Accountability Agency and DPAA, and there's been it's had other names over the years, and their mission is the primary mission. They're formed for the missing in Southeast Asia from the Vietnam War. There's another whole side of that today with politics, but I'm familiar with that. And of course, you have the National League of POW MIA Families, which is has enjoyed an incredible working relationship. And over the 50 plus years, they are known by and they're familiar with every leader in Laos, Cambodia, and North Vietnam. The trouble is our government doesn't talk to them enough, and there's all this back and forth. And you have DIA, which has they have agents that are trained in the language, in the field, on the ground, providing active intel to this day. And they've done an outstanding job. Again, DPAA is the agency that's got to go back. And these days, they're also becoming very focused on generating numbers by doing so from World War II and the Korean War, which we're all happy about bringing back any remains, but they're doing it by decreasing the emphasis on Vietnam. And I don't care what any talking head from DPA says, in the end, it's the final insult to our MIA families.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
I think what you do with the SOGcast is a great way to document the history. And time is ticking with the information that we have to be able to more successfully find those people. Where did we last hear from them? What possible enemy were in the area that could have recovered those remains and taken them somewhere else? As the more time goes on, the more historians or participants in this conflict, in this secret war, are fading away. So it is more ever important now to get all of that information documented to even have a shot at finding these lost Americans.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you're right. And here's the last factor: the soil in Southeast Asia is the most acidic soil in the world, and it's so acidic that it eats away the bones. And depending on which archaeologist or which technician you talk to, there may only be 5 or 10 more years before the bones are totally destroyed. And imagine looking for a couple of teeth, and the jungle, over time, the jungle always grows. So if there's a person who dies, just say somebody dies, then the jungle will grow over them if nobody touches them or if the animals don't drag them away. And at some point, you're just going to have to say, we surrender. But right now, the DPA is giving lip service to Vietnam. And the classic example, like 8-9 years ago, the DPA had more than a dozen analysts. And the analysts were the ones who looked at contemporary reports, checking with old reports. They go to our reunions every year to talk to our vets, getting new details. And the men that do that at the field level are outstanding. Don't get me wrong here. But higher up, over time, all those analysts, the majority of them have been removed and put into World War II and Korean War stuff. So today, there might be 2 or 3. I don't know the accurate number because nobody talks to me. I've been a little bit critical about this. So there might be 2 or 3 analysts, and even the analysts have little time to investigate the cases because they're now required to do annual meetings with families. So they'll have a meeting on the East Coast, a meeting on the West Coast, and each one they got to prepare reports. That's a lot of paperwork as opposed to going in and interviewing Ho Chi Minh's uncle or cousin or Joe Biff the Ragman, who may have known where Glenn Lane and Robert Owen disappeared in May 1968 from St. Idaho. I mean, obviously the team was wiped out because the bright light that went in was hit with American weapons and American hand grenades. And one of the Americans, the troll, George Sternberg, he's in SOGcast 001. He literally had his jungle boots blown off by an American hand grenade. And that's why we know that the team, at least the Americans, were wiped out. And we, the little people, the Vietnamese on our team, they're outstanding fighters. So we assume they went down fighting.
Yeah, that's the crazy thing, that we live in a world where we can search the depths of the ocean, find a Titanic, find every remnant of that ship, but we can't allocate the same passion and resource to find our own Green Berets. That's, to me, it's ridiculous to sit here and say, like, well, it can't be done. I'm like, well, really? I'm pretty sure we can have laid out. We can have every sort of resource we can find, go in there and start doing more. It's just a matter of people shifting priorities. And like you said, political figureheads that just want to do the talk game.
Right. And then, there are outstanding nonprofits today that are working on bringing home the remains, but I don't know of any that DPAA will even allow in Southeast Asia. These other organizations are going for World War II stuff, which is fine. I mean, God bless them. They're raising millions of dollars. The people that work those are outstanding. They're conscientious. And when they find them, they do the right identifications, and the families are finally reunited. But, the World War II people, and even Korean War, at some point, they've said, this is what happened in that war. And Vietnam, that was the first time that American families petitioned the enemy to improve the conditions of incarceration and prison for the Americans that were POWs there. And then from that, when the POWs came home in February of 73, the government didn't talk about the people that we didn't talk about, which means all of our men from the Secret War, other Americans that were there from the CIA and in Laos and Cambodia and North Vietnam. And that number was close to 2,000. Now it's down to 1,584. But that number has only decreased by 1 or 2 at a time over the last few years, as DPAA talks about Vietnam's our primary mission, but it's not really.
Yeah.
Yeah. Other than that, how'd you enjoy the play, Mrs. Lincoln?
Oh my God.
I'm sorry, I'm just a little bit bitter about it.
No, understandably.
Completely understandable.
Yeah.
I do have to ask, when being on a team where you absolutely have a concrete understanding that going home is not a luxury and something, because our current deployment format is exhausting, but it's not like what you guys had, where it's not like, we're going to be in it for 6 months and then we're going to rotate back out and then another team's going to tap in. You're there for a substantial amount of time. What did you guys do in order to maintain not just your sanity, but that hope, maintaining that hope of like, hey, keep doing our job, keep doing the best thing, performing the best we can, and we're going to get out of this?
Well, our tour of duty was only 1 year, and then we were up. You could extend. And so in my case, my first tour of duty came up as it ended. Lynn Black had come on the team, and I was handing the team off to him, and he was a better 1-0 than I was. So I had no worries about the team being in good hands. And then the Frenchman came over for at least our little team, RT Idaho. And I had a sweet thing back at the States. So I felt obligated to get home. I corresponded for a year, and had it not, I would have extended right then. But went back, was up at Fort Devens for 5 months with the 10th group, which is very different from the 10th group today. And I hated every second up there. Went back to Vietnam, got on my team. In fact, I went down to the Pentagon and had Billy Alexander write me up the orders. I went in there like on a Thursday morning. I went in, gave her flowers and her bottle. She had a certain wine she liked. So I gave her both. And by 4 o'clock, I had my orders. I drove back to Devens in the morning, signed out. Monday, the MPs came. There had been some activity downtown that they wanted to talk to me about, but I was en route to Vietnam, so never got a chance to talk to the lads.
That's one of the that takes the cake. a lot of us wish we would have been able to do that at so many different times. Like that's a whole different world. But man,
well, one night they had a front gate. There's two ways in, one way in and one way out. Well, one night we went in the out gate. I had a 442 W30, went in there with a sideways drift, and they chased me with the little Jeep, right? Forget it. They were trying to find me. I just hid amongst our commo rigs. The MPs could never quite figure out where we went. But
that's good.
That's so now you're going back, and now it's definitive that it's better to be active, and that's what we feel. It's better on deployment than coming back. Like you come back and it's like, all right, reset the clock and let's get gone again. And seeing like, and people can't appreciate or understand that till you've actually done it. It's like, yeah, it's better for us once we're deployed and back into it. That's just the mindset of doing that job. Is it's easier to deal with the simplicity of combat than coming back stateside and dealing with stateside military issues.
Well, yeah, and again, I got back, so I went back to my team. Lynn was a 1-0. He ran the team, and Doug had just de-roast out, so he left. I missed my time with Doug, and I got it back in the end of October. So November 3rd, RT Maryland's wiped out. On November the 10th, RT, gosh, I think it was ASP. I always draw a blank, but 2 teams wiped out completely, and I've been back less than 2 weeks. We tried to do bright light for them, had weather conditions, couldn't get in. But the seriousness of the war and the escalation, because by that time, Johnson had stopped the bombing campaign up north. And the second that word went out, they came south with more anti-aircraft, more personnel. The Russians came south, training the South Vietnamese how to use the anti-aircraft, artillery, everything from 37 Mike to 12.7s, 23s. Oh man, they had it. And the helicopter pilots and our coveys, which were a code name for our facts, they really every day was, where's the latest anti-aircraft site? And it was just stacking up out there. And that added to the, not to mention what the mission was when you're on the ground, because by 69, they had battalions that were trained, NVA battalions trained solely to come find our teams, kill the Americans, and leave the indigenous alive for PSYOP purposes. And that was going on.
That's it. That's the other part that a lot of people don't realize is you were most wanted. That was you're being hunted, actively being sought out by the enemy, and that's a whole different ball game, because you guys are deadly. You guys are precision, deadly tools. But when you have an entire nation looking just for you and your teams, it's a whole different fucking game.
Yeah, and then along those lines, the indigenous people had to cooperate with the communists. If they didn't, they would just kill them.
Yeah.
So besides the regular army guys that were there, keeping the Ho Chi Minh Trail, that's where the supplies came south. They had all the people there that kept the trails moving. And then you had the battalion. I think by the end, they had over 2 battalions of sappers that they were trained to do nothing but overrun our teams or our hatchet force if they went in.
Holy shit.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's
They're
terrifying.
serious about it.
Yeah.
That's terrifying.
Yeah. No, it's going into that environment, knowing you're outnumbered, outgunned, but still know that you're one of the most effective tools that our nation has in fighting this war. And it's still, you got to fucking accomplish the mission. That is fucking insane for lack of any other words.
And I feel it was a unique and new way of conducting warfare that really shaped the rest of what special forces looked like after that. Because a lot of, working with Indige and stuff, it's all things that we can relate to. Because that was your guys' job. I was just there to call and cast for you whenever you needed or provide intelligence or something like that.
See, we never knew what you guys were until now. This is a new phenomenon.
Yeah.
Because that's why I carried the radio. I called in the airstrikes.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you. I know I never had to fight in the jungle, but there were some thicker areas, and I know with the increase of canopy cover comes with the increase of risk of fratricide. So how is it that you navigated that? Whether it was providing, as many updates as possible, or the way you employed ordnance?
Well, the way we employ, the key element to employing ordnance was commo, as always. You know how it is with us echoes, Denai. You got to get the word up. So the special element to that was our coveys had a covey rider. So there would be an Air Force FAC, but there would be a Green Beret who had experience on the ground. So that in itself gave the team on the ground and the Air Force pilot who was coordinating with air assets for TAC Air. And it cut out a lot of bullshit and unnecessary commo. So the key thing was we either had to get linked by a mirror flashy or smoke, right. Or sometimes we use a pin flare to locate us. And we'd usually have an opening somewhere where, if we had been on the ground for 2 or 3 days and they would come out looking for you, first thing we had to do was get that airplane over us. And we'd be on the radio, bringing them in like through a flashy, or if we're in a tactical situation and we're having a firefight, well, then we're popping smoke. But at least with the mirror, maybe an occasional tracer or a pin flare, you would do it to get their attention. So once they locked in on us, then we could direct it. And again, the golden rule, you never go across your team. You go in front it, right, on the north and south, east and west sides, but never across your team. We had a couple of guys that did that, and their team paid a severe price for it.
Yeah, you gotta always parallel and never perpendicular.
Yes.
You never want them coming towards you, or even if coming over you. So, but I could definitely relate to that. I did it for 10 years, and it's 10 years, and it's very very interesting. Learning the history of how guys like me came to be. The guy riding in the aircraft with the FAC, that's just me now. And I'm an Air Force guy that's on the ground, and I, eat with the team and I go out with the team. I used to, I don't do anymore.
Yeah.
But
but 10 years is a pretty good run.
It was a good run. That's incredible.
Well, here's something else that I think that your training for close air support was a little bit more detailed than ours. We had in-country training where you had a group and you watch somebody calling an airstrike, and then you go to our base and you may have 1 or 2 practice gun runs just with the helicopters. But this is no SPADs, which are the A1 Sky Raiders, slow movers, and then of course the fast movers. And but we knew what the ordnance was, and we knew what the capabilities were, including CBU, because that's the first time we ever heard about CBU was when we were in country on the ground. Be advised, we're going to do CBU run, like WTF.
Yeah.
What's the CBU?
Hopefully you're not employing those where you're going to walk later, because there's a pretty significant dud rate on those things.
Yeah, there's a couple of well, fortunately the Air Force was good in warning us about that too.
Right.
So that's why that was our training compared to what you guys had.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
It's a lot of training, a lot of education, and arguably one of the most intensive jobs, and one that doesn't get enough validation and props is the guy that's doing all the controlling, because he's not sleeping, he's not eating on mission. It's constantly keeping all that air coverage up there saving us. And it's some asshole like me that's yelling at him over comms with, I need you to destroy the building to the west of me before I'm dead.
Yeah.
Which may or may not have happened.
Yeah.
Right. And you've had a few occasions, I mean, because everybody's using all that high technology.
Yeah.
And we've had tragic results, even in your war.
Yes.
Where if that computer is not linked the correct way, there's horrific results that can stem from that. And
two numbers are switched, and it's a catastrophe.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I mean, I have a lot of respect for you as the guy on the ground with, you know, the radio and providing those real-time updates of, you know, at least, hey, like, this is where, you know, we're at, like, and then you're tracking your partner force too.
Oh, yeah.
And that is a challenge in of itself, even if you're just doing tactical ground maneuvers. So you had too many hats on. Like, I'm sorry you didn't have your own guy to do that, because
if we could time travel, we'd give you
we were
Ryan.
lucky there.
Yeah.
We never had to worry about that. It was like us, everybody else was the enemy. Now, if we ran into,
that's true.
If we
You
ran
can't miss,
into
really.
some of the local indigenous people, if they had their saws for cutting wood, we're not going to fire them up, you know. But so everybody else was the bad guy once we were on the ground across the fence. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
A little different than your work. I can't imagine
sure.
trying to, you want to direct an airstrike, and where's Joe Biff the ragman or Joe Biff the Afghan, you know?
It's a constant, the more that goes into your plan, you know, like, it makes it a little easier on the execution, but then you have all the variables. And let me tell you, Afghan partner force, variable is their middle name. They will do the craziest shit. And oh man, even just wrangling them to get them in a row to get on the helicopter under 2 minutes so you don't get like destroyed on exfil. That is a challenge of its own. Yeah.
You mean to tell me you didn't enjoy my random RPG guy?
No. I didn't, to be honest, I didn't enjoy any of your people. So, I'm like trying to, oh man, they would just disappear. I'd be trying to count people, and they were like, where is he? Like,
Chief always had the wild indage.
Yeah.
My gun teams were always a bit wild. They ran loose.
Wow. Yeah. See, we affectionately called our Vietnamese little people because they're literally littler.
Yeah.
But they were in and out of those helicopters in a New York City second, and they were quick. And I'm alive today thanks to their valor and the fact that they're just incredible soldiers. Fearless.
Absolutely. And that's a part of the regiment that is still alive today. That ability to work and develop those bonds with the people that are there with you fighting in that country. Like, you form a real brotherhood. And from the interpreters to the guys that you have on your as your commandos. And that's
and the counterpart, the team leader from the indigenous side. Like in my case, it was Sal. You know, it took me 5 or 6 months to earn his respect, because I had to earn his respect. I mean, it was one thing to talk, to go out and do training missions and have a beer and go downtown for local patrols and stuff. But it's another for them to go give you that nod, you know?
Yep.
And
exactly.
And with our guys, they knew their government was corrupt, and they were willing to die fighting communism as opposed to being under the thumb of communism. And you know, we never, at least on our recon team, we never had a problem with friendly fire or worrying about them opening up, shooting us, or doing anything like that.
Yeah.
I mean, we were in it together, and it was just the further I get away from it, the more impressed I am with the valor of our little people. Sad to say, we've lost most now. They're not around, but that's why I always try to write them up. And of course, the King Bees.
Yeah.
I mean, my God, I could have been dead so many times. Our whole team would have been wiped out had it were not for the King Bees. And we had other air assets. I mean, they're just outstanding. I mean, any of our air from the Marine Corps, like Scarface, HML 367, who served during the entire Secret War supporting SOG. But there's very little written about it. And there might be another book coming out finally on that. And then you got like the 101st with Roger Locksteer just did a book called We Save SOG Souls. And he was a crew chief with the 101st Airborne during most of 68. And that was our worst year in terms of casualties and teams lost. And that was when the whole transition, they moved down more to the anti-aircraft stuff.
Yeah,
and
those final years were pretty damn rough. As the guy on the ground going through that, did you get any inkling or any word that like, hey, like this is not going to go, like our administration, our people back home, this thing's not going to continue because they don't have the fortitude to just let us do our job? What was your feeling and your understanding on the ground?
Well, we were always under a political yoke anyway because of the State Department. And to this day, I think there's more communists in the damn State Department than there are in Hanoi or Moscow.
Yeah.
Let's just get that on the record, okay? I mean, look at what those assholes did with our Afghans, trying to get our people out, people that supported us over 20 years.
Yeah.
But that aside, it's just, I don't know, it's just hard. It's hard to really get into graphic details on it. But our people, I mean, the mission was horrible. They limited, meaning Cambodia, we could not have, they agreed to this, the State Department agreed that we would not have close air support. All they had was helicopter gunships. I mean, and here's this, another classic example of politics in Cambodia. During my briefing on Thanksgiving Day, we had a mission, and the mission was to find one of 3 NVA divisions that were NVA divisions. The 1st, the 3rd, and the 7th were all MIA. So Thanksgiving Day, 68, we get a briefing, and we were up all night studying reports, photos, and we get in. When I leave, and during the briefing, they say, you can't use white phosphorus grenades. So I'm going, okay. We had a firefight, literally running back to the LZ, putting down claymores with 5-second fuses because we found 2 of the 3 NVA divisions that weren't happy with us being in Cambodia with them. They literally chased us back to the LZ, and we killed a whole bunch of them. And we're not for the Green Hornets, the SOS, the Air Force 20th SOS Special Operations Squadron, we would have been wiped out. They saved us, the 5-second claymores. We get out as we're leaving. You cocksuckers, I threw down a white phosphorus grenade. This is Thanksgiving on Thursday, 68. 2 days later, we get into we get in, perfect infill. We get to a road, and it's like thick jungle, and there's the road right there, like boom, boom. So I have my camera, I'm taking pictures. Bubba Shore, my assistant team leader, went out, put an anti-tank mine in the middle of the road, led it back. So we were going to get a POW. And there's trucks coming down, some with troops, some with supplies, but they're NVA trucks. And we're getting ready to blow it. And across my radio comes General Creighton Abrams orders you out of the field, back to base now. I say, yeah, we're in the middle of an operation. No, cease and desist your operation, get your ass back. So we get back there. What happened? The CO pulls me and he goes, look, Premier Sihanouk, the Premier of Cambodia filed a formal protest with our government over my white phosphorus grenade. Now, he wasn't upset about the 100,000 NVA that were there or those 3 divisions that we were trying to find. Yeah, that didn't bother him. But they pulled my ass out of the field to chew my ass out for a white phosphorus. That's how ridiculous it was. Yeah. So the CEO goes, well, what happened? So I told him what happened. He says, well, what's your cover story? Well, our cover story is that I regret that somehow that white phosphorus fell on my harness, and somehow that pin, I had the pin ready to pull, accidentally it fell, and I'm really sorry for you if you hurt anybody. And then he covered my ass for me. But that's insane. How stupid the politics were. Yeah. Now, I mean, you guys probably have tales from your time there.
Yeah, when I was
worse.
I was in Syria, and
Syria, you weren't there.
Okay. Well, Joe doesn't know that I was there. Okay. But
Yeah.
I was fucking there. I promise. And you know, like as the Afghan withdrawal happened, you know, there's two major consequences of that, like besides the fact that it was a complete and total shit show.
Oh yeah.
So the first consequence was that it emboldened our enemies. So now we're being attacked more. And the unfortunate second consequence is the administration didn't have an appetite for us retaliating to those attacks because of how much bad press was in the media over the Afghan withdrawal. And what a, like I said, it was a goddamn what the fuck. So
Yeah.
and we got attacked, rocketed blatantly. I mean, we had every adversary, whether they're proxy or not. You got the Russians across the Euphrates, you have the Syrian regime, then you have the Russian militia, then you have ISIS, and there's all of them are seeing weakness. The populace is seeing weakness. Like I'm you know, head of like the security because I'm talking to the overhead asset. I'm always with the commander right next to him watching his back, and we have crowds around us of people saying like, well, you don't give a shit about us, like look what you just did to Afghanistan. And all we can say is, well, you have a good point, but we're not the government, you know, like we're here to help you, like we're men just like you, and we're here, and you know, we want to help any way you can. But when we got attacked, like my job is to understand the rule of engagement. My job is to protect the captain legally, and I'm not a JAG, but I understand that rule of engagement so much that I can advise him, hey, like under this hostile act or hostile intent, like you have all of the authority to retaliate as you see fit. You do not need any permission from anyone above you under this ROE code. And they're too scared to make decisions because of the political environment. And, you know, and I got buddies that their convoy's getting ambushed, and I'm medevacing 3 people, and I find the guys responsible, and I'm ready to pull the trigger, and they tell me no. And they're not actively engaged. I'm like, well, motherfucker, they're ISIS. Like,
yeah,
we didn't lose PID. Like, we know exactly where they're at. Like, this guy just did a 3-kilometer sprint. You think that people just fucking do that for fun? Like, no, you dipshit.
My favorite thing was having to call JAG for guidance on being able to use certain munitions. I'm not even joking. This is not hyperbole. The guy is like, well, I have to look into this. I'm like, no, you don't. I'm going out the door in the last couple hours, and if you don't tell me I can't do this certain thing, I'm gonna use this thing and just call it shake and bake. And it was a great time.
Yeah.
And I was shooting shake and bake rounds left and right on infill and exfil, and
spicy smoke.
Spicy smoke. That's all you have to call it. But I remember coming back and then sitting in the team room, and like 3 days later, that same Jack calls me back. He's like, hey, technically, no, you cannot use that. I'm like, oh yeah, well, technically I'm not, because I'm calling it something else, asshole. I am not sitting here and debating with you how I'm going to fight this war. Like, this is absolute asinine that we've gotten ourselves into a place where we are waiting for somebody that's never going to be in combat to tell me that I can't do something to save my life. No, thank you. Spicy smoke for everybody.
Yeah. But where you can shortcut that, it's not your country, right? And you are working with Indige.
Exactly.
Do whatever the fuck they want. And John, I'm sure you can relate to that. Where maybe you can't throw the spicy grenade and get away with it without repercussions, but man, I mean, you can hand that thing off to anyone you want, and it's their fucking fault.
Yeah, well, see, this is a classic example of you guys having learned from our mistakes. I wasn't bright enough to think about that. Of course, on the other hand, my guys were South Vietnamese, so technically they were foreigners too.
That's true.
In Cambodia.
But I mean, closer
to
their home than it is to yours. So
I would just been like, closer. Cambodia? I was looking at the wrong map. Ah, shit.
And there was another instance where, you know, I was soaking a target with ISR for God knows how many days. And I was lucky enough to get some good intelligence, like right before we stepped out the door. with a drone, and they were out 40 ADMs in the field having the fucking World Cup right by a mosque.
Really?
And then they come and we're like, okay, it's gonna be crazy. I watched them arm the IEDs around the mosque, and then we get to the mosque when we're on the ground, and the partner forces are like, dude, this thing's fucking booby trapped. Like, it is a landslide situation. Like, we're not going in there. And I'm like, great. Well, since they're using the mosque as a cache for IEDs and it's booby trapped, it loses its status as a protected structure. So, I mean, this is the rules. I didn't make them. I just read them, right? And I'm coming up with weaponeering solutions. I'm going to use two GBU-39s and put those things in there, and it's all just going to go up, and I'm fucking pumped about it. And then I get a phone call and SAT. I didn't get the call. Someone handed me a SAT phone. I think it might have been our team lead there. And he's like, "Oh, Jag's on the phone," and I'm like, "Whoa, Rob?" And they're like, "Nope,
Really?
the Jag." And I'm like, "Okay." I'm like, "Hello." And the first thing he says is, "Don't blow up the mosque." Like, what do you mean don't blow up the mosque? But,
it's right there.
Yeah, it's clearly a lawful target.
Oh
man, it's just like, how do you win a war when you're treating your guys like that?
Yeah.
So, but I feel you. I mean, I feel like
you have a 4-letter word there. It's Jag. Man, those people, I mean, they're not out to win the war.
No, not at all.
No,
but I definitely feel your frustration, and it's super, super unfortunate that they would even risk taking you off of a mission like that, just to prove some fucking point that doesn't actually like matter. So
yeah, unfortunately, I mean, I was TDY down south. The CO down there covered for us, Had he not, that could have gone a little bit further, but we ran one more mission, and then we had a situation where up north, out of our FOB, King Bee went down with 7 Green Berets on an eldest son mission. And so that knocked our manpower down. So my TDY tour duty ended abruptly, and they shipped me back north to get back up to FOB 1. But we had 7 men, and plus the King Bee crew that went down November 30th, 1968. And that eldest son was the doctored ammo that they would go in, insert it, then the enemy would use it and it'd blow up in their face and kill them, or at least maim them for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
Either way.
I think it's a war crime now, but back then, I think
well,
it was okay.
technically, that's kind of still around.
Yeah.
Off the record.
Yeah, I've seen. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. I'm not saying we still do that. I'm not saying it's still a thing. It's still a thing.
But it is. I've talked to guys from your ear that did it.
Yeah. It's a great tool. I love that, and because it only affects the assholes.
That's true.
Oh yeah, one of my favorite YouTubes was the either an ISIS or Al Qaeda. He had his 82 millimeter, throws it down the tube.
Yeah.
That'll happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, Allah's waiting for you.
That's weird. That doesn't happen to us. It's very strange that it happened to you. How did that political frustration, did that factor into your decision to part ways after a couple tours?
Well, at the end of my second tour, it ended abruptly because me and the commanding officer, who was a tanker, who knew nothing about special forces, he's one of Creighton Abrams' buddies, and Creighton sent him up to our unit to get some command time and to get some medals. So he put himself in for a lot of medals. And then while he's in the middle of that, I was in the middle of my second tour of duty, and we had a major disagreement. And he said, "I'm going to end your career. And next day you're out of camp." And it ended after I've been running recon for 19 months. So I went, but he didn't realize that my ETS was up in 2 weeks. So I figured God put that asshole in my life to say, your body's still intact, if not your mind. Just go on home, get back to college. So got out 2 weeks later. They did. We had the best party our team ever had. We gave them like $500 or $600. They went out and bought all the food and booze. We had a big party that night. It was April 1970. And that was right after we had come back from a 4-man mission in the Ashaw Valley. And each guy passed out. Hep was the last man standing. He goes, "Ma, you need anything else?" I said, "No." He laid down and passed out right there. So I picked him up. I dusted him off. I carried him into the team room. I put him in the bed and covered him up. And I stood there. It was like the most painful moment of my life. To be there, leaving him behind, knowing I was going to be getting out of the Army.
Yeah.
Let alone getting out of Vietnam. And those guys were there. Now, again, we had good Americans. I wasn't worried about the follow-up. John Ingalls was on the team. He was experienced, and they had other people that came in that I learned years later. It came in. And Idaho was one of the first teams to run all indig missions across the fence. And Ken Bore, who retired as a 2-star major general, he was the last American 1-0 on that team, which I never knew about until a few years ago. And Ken trained them up further and turned the team over, and they ran missions across the fence by themselves. So we were really proud of our team. But that night, that moment, is one of the most painful moments of my life.
Oh yeah, I've had my own moment leaving the team, and I know same goes for Ryan, and that's people that have never served in that capacity in that type of environment where the brotherhood is so tight and it's a family that works and is effective. Walking away from that, going into the unknown of civilian life is the hardest thing you can do. That is a true testament of, like, do you have the strength to succeed? Because man, if we could stay forever young, and I know a lot of us would stay on the teams.
Oh, absolutely. No question about it. And, here's the other thing. I mean, then you got your August 16th. We've got April 30th. The only difference is at least you guys had technology, people on the ground where you could work to bring people back. We couldn't.
Yeah.
I mean, in 1975, April 30, 1975, when Saigon fell, they were screwed and we were screwed. And I was just a little peon at a local newspaper with living paycheck to paycheck. What could I do? We tried over the years to bring some of our guys back. The only one that made it out was Hep, but that was additional. Like, your guys is bad with your August 16th, which we're getting close to the anniversary date. And then ours was even worse, or hear me tell, because we just never get back to our little people. It just gnaws away at you over time.
Yeah, it hits.
And we're alive today. I'm sure in your case, you could give examples of you wouldn't be here if it wasn't for your little people.
Oh yeah, I know.
Really?
We have way too many close calls that if it wasn't for dedicated interpreters that came out and fought with me to save other Americans, I wouldn't be here. Like, you're in a firefight, you're pinned down, and you and 2 interpreters are the only ones that can make a difference. And you look at these guys and you're like, holy shit, like, these are my brothers. These are my brothers. Like, they're not here for a paycheck. They're not here to like write a book. They're just here to help us fight this fucking war. And that's a whole different, because hey, I'm getting a paycheck. I have a uniform. This dude's here. A few weeks ago, he was over there. He grew up in this country. He's here fighting on behalf of like us, wanting to give his family a better shot at life. And then seeing all that shit unfold.
Yeah. And then, people, particularly our scumbag media these days, they do not give any coverage to the heinous nature of the enemy, of what you're up against. I mean, there'll be some stories. Thank God there's been some really good books on Afghanistan and even Iraq now. Not many, but there are a few that are really good. That at least give a sense of what you all are up against. And the same thing with us.
Yeah.
You know, people just forget. I mean, you look around today, you see these clowns at college going, wearing a Che Rivera shirt, talking about how great socialism is. Excuse me. No, I've been introduced to socialism when I didn't do what they wanted. They tried to kill my ass. And you call socialism and communism, they're all the same bed. They hate America.
Absolutely.
And I don't, you know, our education system has failed big time. And the media today has not given adequate coverage to the evil you guys came up against. It's ongoing.
Oh yeah.
It won't end. And now we
That's-
got a lot of people in our country that are in sheep's clothing, but they're really wolves.
Absolutely. It's the idea that socialism is this beautiful tool for equality. You're not looking at the history. You're not looking at what it's done to places like Vietnam, Cuba, anywhere where it's been instilled. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
It only leads to further suffering. And we now have people in our own government, education system that are rallying for it. Like I am not American by birth. I'm American by choice. I came from Central America. I have seen, and I grew up with, you know, real poverty. I've also seen the benefit of having an American government that allows you to have freedom of choice, the ability to live in freedom. It is not the same as living in a communist country. It is far from it. Communism does not equal freedom and having a great life. It brings you into despair, poverty, and the understanding that the government and the state are a horrible fucking provider. Like, that's the fucking truth. And we need to start telling people and showing people what it really means to be an American again, because we've really lost that. We've really gone off to the wayside.
Yeah, maybe when that WNBA player gets done her 9-year term in prison with Russia
for smoking weed,
come back and talk a little bit about that.
Yeah,
like,
wouldn't that be great?
Yeah, like the same people that shit on this country and what it was founded on will put themselves in that, will get put in situations like that, and then sit there and be like, "Oh fuck,
Yeah,
help me." I'm like, "Wait, no. You're far off better there. This place wasn't so good."
Unfortunately, human beings have yet to break the cycle of society of where, you know, we go through these times of great peace and then we change things because of that peace. And then we go, and maybe it's our time, maybe it's our children's time. But history teaches us a lot. About ourselves, and I think that unfortunately it's inevitable. So
but true. And look at the erosion of so many institutions. I mean, the family in America and has been under attack, and white men have been under attack for 50 years now. It's part of the undermining of our country and religious freedoms. My God. And I think that's, if there's a positive to come out of all this COVID China virus stuff, it's that a lot of this has surfaced. The CRT stuff that we may not have known about, it would have gotten deeper, but at least now it's come out publicly. And you look at this administration, what a complete disgrace. There aren't people in there that have practical experience in industry or anywhere else. They're all political appointees that have one agenda. And none of those agendas improve or help America.
Absolutely none. But it's important for us to point out that our vice president is a woman who wears a blue dress.
And
and goes by whatever.
And she has a difficult time stringing together 2 sentences.
Or making any resemblance of a point.
But hey, progress, right? But there is hope. It's unprecedented, the amount of Green Berets that we have running for office, the amount of leaders within our regiment that have said, you know what, we've been gone for 20 years. It's time for us to transition into the civilian world and help put our nation back together, and at least show them that there's no such thing as toxic masculinity. We need fathers, we need men, we need real people doing real hard work in government.
Hell, even China knows that.
Yeah.
They're banning people from playing more than an hour of video games a day or being into like hentai shit because they understand that like the lack of masculine men is going to be the downfall of their society. So I mean, they're doing it with an iron fist, but
which will backfire.
Yeah, I don't think they're completely wrong there.
I think what needs to happen is at every school, when a boy is 12 years old, they need to hand them on the ground the Secret War in Vietnam, hand it to them, and be like, go outside and read this, and go in the woods, and you pretend that you're John Meyer, and you pretend you're out there going after the enemy, and don't come back.
That's what a lot of us did when we were kids. I feel like you just talked about my childhood. I would run out in the woods with sticks and pretend that I'm a commando.
Yeah, same here. And look what that did.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
John, thank you so much for joining us today, sir.
Sure. Pleasure's all mine.
We are huge fans. We are honored to have had you on, and we will continue to not only talk about our history and our lineage, but we're going to reach back out and try to get you on and have some more of your brothers come on and talk about your experiences, because that's how we teach the next generation of Green Berets about our history. We have to be able to put it out there in a true, honest, authentic format, not in the great veneer of comic books or TVs, because that doesn't even hold a candle to talking to the real legends. So thank you for joining us.
Yeah, because the other day, I think it was either the New York Slimes or the Wall Street Journal. They had a thing about American heroes, and there was all the Marvel heroes, and I'm going like, what's wrong with this picture?
Yeah.
And to get some kind of a true understanding of what each of our generations have been through, and talk about history from the real side of it, as opposed to today's social agenda that's just being forced down kids' throats in schools, which is really wrong. That's where there's a lot of mothers out there that are pissed off, and they're rising up and speaking to hopefully change some of these things. We even have it in Tennessee.
Yeah.
And I moved to Tennessee. My wife and I moved in a year ago. We love it here, feel like we moved back to America. But even here, there's efforts in schools to get in extracurricular with social stuff. And they ignore the history, they ignore social studies, civics that we all had to learn about our country. Yeah, it's not perfect. I'll tell you what, you go to any you go to Cuba, go hang out for a couple of weeks. And when you can't get your hamburger or whatever you want, you're going to come back, you'll kiss the ground when you get back to America. I know I did.
Yeah, absolutely. No, real heroes don't wear bright colored capes and their underwear on their outside of their pants. Real heroes wear tiger stripe BDUs and carry car 15s. Go deep in the fucking jungle of Laos and Cambodia.
And don't forget Thumper. We always carried Thumper.
Yeah, Thumper. I also like to carry Thumper.
Yeah. I affectionately called mine the Yeet Cannon for the new generation.
That's what I called it too.
Did you cut yours down too?
No, mine was already pretty short.
Yeah, ours was really short, and I just carried it standalone, and it was by
like
far
a
the
handgun.
Yeah,
like
it's literally
no butt stock,
no
no hand grip. Just I would use it for marking. So just throw some smoke out there somewhere and be like, all right, from the smoke.
There you go. That's right.
When I affectionately came up with the spicy smoke, just whiskey, what are you doing? I'm sending more spicy smoke. Yeah.
It was really, really important to check the winds before you did something like that.
Yes. You always want to be upwind from it.
Oh my God. Thank you so much for joining us today, John. I greatly appreciate it, sir.
Well, thank you.
Has been phenomenal.
On a very serious note, as we close.
Yes.
We did our thing, but you guys, both of you, stood on our shoulders and took it to the next level. So I thank you guys.
Thank you so much. That means the world to us.
Yeah, no, I mean it. You guys did it. You went where they sent you.
Oh, yeah.
God bless you.
Thank you, John.
Till next time.
Yes, sir.